Hi, Brian. Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure, what's up?
For our create path in our migrate, once we DB migrate, we don't really need those anymore, right?
Can you let's wait another minute and I think there's a couple more people that are gonna join and then I can answer your question.
Okay, thank you.
I need a second to sip some coffee before my brain is working. All right, let's go ahead and get kicked off. Kwa, can you repeat your question?
Yes, once we do like a creating our migrate path, like the create shelter, create pets, once we migrate that into a schema, do we still need those files? Can we delete them?
Are you talking about the migration files themselves?
Yes.
So no, you can't delete those migration files. Well, you wouldn't want to delete those migration files because those are the like the history, the written record of how to build up your database schema. So that kind of would be what I talked about in previously about you don't want to like go back and rewrite history. You don't want to try to like change that migration history. You want to like keep that history and yeah, keep it permanent. So if you think back to the diagram that I drew yesterday when I was talking about Heroku, why don't we just look at it together? Where did you all go? There you are. So kind of like I talked about yesterday with Heroku, on your personal computer, you have your own database. On a partner's or any other team members, they would have their own database. There's a database in the Heroku in the production environment. So we don't want to delete any of those migrations because even though your local database might be good, other developers or other environments are still going to need those instructions for how to build that database. Does that make sense, Kwa?
Because my thinking is when we migrate into the schema, we're all of that history to me is more like editing it. Like if there's like we did something wrong, we change it, we edit it. So it's
You're talking about the
definitely
schema file, like schema.rb.
no, more like 20201005 like create shelter.rb like right under the migrate file directory.
Yeah, so what would happen if you deleted that file is when
Mm-hmm.
you tried to push it to Heroku and Heroku tries to create this. Can you all see my diagram and see like my mouse circling? Cool. So when you tell Heroku to migrate and create this database, if you've deleted that create shelters one, it could it wouldn't create that shelter appropriately. So this database would be off. This database up here wouldn't know how to create those shelters appropriately.
I see. So then it would actually go through like it would create um all this database for like it would start creating from the one that we messed up. Let's say we messed up and then we want to change a column to like an integer or a string. And then it will just kind of roll through the code that way and until it gets to where we're at in our schema. Is that what
Yeah,
you're pretty much saying?
it'll roll through the
Okay.
migrations in order and build them up. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you had
Gotcha.
If you make a new migration that's like, change this column name to something else, if you delete the original migration that creates the column, when you get to changing it, it'll be like, I can't change this column because it doesn't exist.
I see. So it's not just importing the schema, it is actually building. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so when you run Rails DB migrate, it works through the migrations. I think you said like rolls through the code. Yeah, it'll roll through those migrations in order and build up the schema step by step. And that's how you want to build up your schema. Now, that does bring up another point of the schema.rb file is kind of like the like the master copy of what's the current version of schema, or what should be the like most recent version of the schema. It is possible to just tell Rails, hey, take that schema file and load that as our schema. You can do that. It's just generally not the best practice. Jameson, I'm curious, do you have any other thoughts on that? Like, what did you do on the job?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have much to add because at both of my jobs, we used structure.sql instead of using the schema file that comes with Rails. So, but yeah, agree with everything you said.
Gotcha. So yeah, there are different ways to load the schema, but you, if you go back and delete migrations, you're kind of like making it impossible to run the migrations because you're like editing history. It's kind of like if someone gave you instructions for making coffee, like someone gave you a recipe book and maybe it's not making coffee. Maybe someone gives you a recipe book of like, here's how to make a pizza. And then you make a pizza and you're like, great, I know how to make a pizza. And then you rip that page out of the recipe book. Well, then if you try to hand that recipe book to someone else and you're like, make a pizza, they're like, I don't know how you took out the instructions for how to do it.
So if we have a working schema that we wanted, but we don't have any of the file in the migrate path, would it go straight to the schema and just take that and implement it?
Not if you ran Rails DB migrate. You would have to run a different command. I think it's Rails DB schema _load.
But it is
that would do that.
possible. Okay.
Yeah, it is possible. Yes. Yeah, not best practice, but possible.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you for the question, Kwa. Let me switch gears a little bit and talk about a couple other housekeeping things for this morning. So the first thing is, it looks like the the conveyor belt app did work. And I think everybody should have a forked project on your GitHub account with the 30 issues total in your project board. So that's 27 in the backlog, 3 in the extensions. If you for some reason got multiple project boards, you can just close out any other ones. So you just have one with the 27 and the 30. I think for some of you, you actually have multiple working copies that look good. So you can just pick one and close out the other ones. So if you don't have that, please DM me and we can get you up and running on that. The other thing I want to mention about the project is, so we're going to kind of like start our work on the project today with some diagramming. Plan to make try to make a good amount of progress, as much as you can, over this 3-day weekend. So that is something, if you're not aware, we are going to have Monday off for President's Day. So no school, we're not going to be meeting over Zoom or anything, at least not like scheduled for President's Day. So this project is due next Thursday. So that means about half of your time in this project is going to be on your own through this 3-day weekend. So try to make as much progress as you can. I made the comments yesterday in the project kickoff, but one thing you really need to try to be working through is try to not be stuck, or try to not get stuck. And if you do get stuck, doing your best to get unstuck. So like researching, looking at lesson plans, asking a mentor, those are all good strategies. Or asking a mentor, asking classmates. You can message us, on the weekends. We're not always like immediately available, but you can definitely ask us. But the other thing that you should be doing if you do get stuck is try to move on to something else. So I think one of the I think it's like the 4th story is the sad path for submitting a form. So far in class, we've talked about the happy path of user fills in all the form, it looks good, they submit it, and we create something. What happens if the user doesn't fill in all the information correctly? How do we deal with that? That's going to be a class on Tuesday. So if you get to that story and you get stuck, don't take the mindset of, well, this is story 4, so I can't move forward. I'm going to wait to class on Tuesday. That is not what you should be doing. You should say, okay, I can't figure this out yet. Let me move on to the next stories and I'll go back and fill that in later. So that's the strategy that you should have in this early stage of the project. Adam?
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm Monday on the calendar for Monday, it says that there's an independent challenge at 9. Is that actually happening? I know you said we don't have class, but
yeah, so let's talk about that. If you look at the calendar, Monday at 9, we've got independent challenge from 9 to, if you, sorry, I'm getting all twisted. There is a calendar event from 9 to 12 for independent challenge. In order to like kind of rework the schedule so that we could fit everything into 4 days this week, rather than doing the independent challenge during class time, you all are free to work through the independent challenge on your own time. So what we're going to do is, if you look at the calendar for, let me just share. Here we go. So this is what it looks like. So we've got independent challenge right here, 9 to 12. And let me go ahead and just take off the Zoom. So now there's no Zoom here for this. We are going to have the independent challenge review on Thursday afternoon. So the idea here is you all set aside your own time to work through this challenge, and you'll get feedback on it via this review right here. So we're not going to give you personalized feedback on this independent challenge. It's more of, we will kind of walk through what this should look like, and you can use that to study and kind of review what you did on the independent challenge. We are planning on recording these, so that will be kind of like your review material. Our thought process here is we'll do kind of like group feedback or like generalized feedback for this challenge. And then on Monday of week 4, you'll have your mid-mod, and that's when we will give you very personalized, individualized feedback. So that's our plan. We put it here just as a reminder for 9 to 12, but you can do this over the weekend. You could do it Tuesday evening. I would say as long as you're doing it before this review on Thursday afternoon, you're good. But I would recommend that you get it done over the weekend just so that that's one less thing you have on your plate during the week. But of course, if you have like President's Day plans or like someone's coming into town, giving you a little bit of flexibility to plan around that. Andrew.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You might have mentioned this and I missed it, but so our independent challenges mod 1 were all like timed, and I know there's like a 3-hour block for this, but since we have basically until Thursday to do it, are we able to do like small chunks at a time, or is it we need to sit down and do it in that 3-hour amount of time at once?
I would say sit down and do it in the 3-hour time and time yourself. So this is meant to be like good practice for the mid-mod. So part of doing this challenge is just getting that process of sitting down for 3 hours, working through something, and just like kind of watching the time and managing your own process. So the process of working through a time challenge is something that we want you to practice. And this is something that you're going to have to do in interviews. It's not going away in your career. So we're going to give you a chance to practice this in just kind of this like very low stakes environment.
Cool, thank you.
Let me show you all just a little sneak peek of what this is going to look like. I will drop more instructions into your cohort channel for this, but I'll just kind of like show you what we have so far. Whoops. I don't want to start watching Apple TV. All right, so here is the repo. What this is what the repo is going to look like. And so in here we have these are your instructions. So here's how you set up. It says CD into B2 mid-mod, but for this one you would just CD into, I think it'd be called B2 challenges. So this is like the repo we're going to use for, or it's going to be it's going to be a copy of this repo for the mid-mod, for future challenges, for the final. So this is what you will see moving forward. So just a couple things here. You should be working on this independently. You're allowed to use references. So if you have notes or you want to Google something or look at lesson plans, that's fine. We do expect you to reference things. Read each story carefully before you start working. Commit frequently. This is a good one. It's very helpful for us as instructors because it kind of gives us a timeline of what you were thinking. So if you didn't quite get something to work, if we can kind of see a commit history, then we can say, okay, they're moving in the right direction. So this is very helpful for us if you're committing frequently. And it says push your code to your fork once the time is up. This is more for this is more important for the assessments, so like the mid-mod and the final, where we don't want you all to be able to look at each other's code. But for this challenge, I would say like don't look at other people's pull requests if you're doing it later than some other folks. Like if someone wants to do it this afternoon and you want to do it Saturday, don't go look at other people's pull requests. You'd only be hurting yourself by doing that. For the submission, so we do want you to submit pull requests for these, and we want you to include your name and a reflection on how you felt you did with this challenge. So to say like, I got through user story 3, user story 4 was challenging, or I got to user story 3 but couldn't figure it out, whatever. Just tell us like how you did, what you were working on when you finished. So you can put this in really anywhere in your PR, whether that's like the main description section or you add it as a comment to your PR. It doesn't really matter, just as long as we'll see it, as long as it's somewhere in there. And just kind of the usual here, you should be TDDing everything, and you should be model testing everything. So this says model methods and relationships. You do not need to test for or create any model validations. So we're going to talk about model validations next week. That's like validates presence of. If that is in one of the models in your project, you do not need to do that for any of our challenges, and you don't need to do any styling. So really just basic HTML for displaying information is enough. And so then I will post a separate gist of user stories. Yeah, and that's pretty much everything you need to know. What you can expect from this is you will be creating a many-to-many, including the migrations, the models, all of that, creating some index or show pages, doing some active record queries, and passing data through forms or buttons or something like that. Yeah. And so we're just starting the many-to-many class today. So this first challenge, I think, is going to be, I'm expecting it to be difficult. I'm expecting this to be very new for you. And that's kind of the point. Like, it's going to be very difficult. And so it's really going to like force you to practice this many-to-many, which is like a very, very key concept this mod. Adam?
Yeah, just a quick question. I noticed on there that it says run your tests with bundle exec rspec. And then sometimes I've seen some stuff where it just says, just use RSpec. Can you explain the difference between those two things?
Yes, so bundle exec RSpec utilizes the bundler context, which is essentially all of your gems. So as you start like downloading different Rails apps and running bundle, it's gonna install different versions of gems. If you just run a command like RSpec, it's going to, that is kind of telling your computer to find the RSpec command. And so you're kind of relying on your computer's default of which RSpec is it gonna pick. So if I've installed like a couple different versions of RSpec from different versions of Rails, then I'm kind of just like hoping that my computer picks the right one that's gonna run RSpec appropriately. If you go through bundle exec, that will say, pick the version of RSpec that is listed in, let's pull open a gemfile.lock. So if I open this gemfile.lock and I go to, let's look for RSpec. Which one is it? I think it would be this version of RSpec Rails. So this is specifically saying use the version 4.0.1. And so that will ensure this gem file, the whole point of Bundler is to ensure that all of our versions of things play nicely together. So I guess the conclusion here, kind of the TLDR, is you should always run bundle exec and then bundle exec rspec. For beginning mod 2, most likely rspec will just work in a lot of contexts because we don't have a ton of different versions on our computer. But I would just get into the habit now of running bundle exec rspec always. Another important point to make about this, so like you might say like, hey, Brian, wait a minute, but we don't run bundle exec Rails DB create. That's because the Rails commands use bundle exec or use the bundler context by default. So any Rails commands like Rails new, Rails DB create, Rails S, Rails C, all of those use this bundler context. So you don't need to worry about bundle execing those. Any other follow-up questions on that, Ben?
I just remember with the setup for Heroku, it had us doing like I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, but it was like Heroku Run Rails.
Rake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so do we have to use the Heroku Run or whatever was before that in context when doing those migrate and stuff for the Heroku database, or can we just do what's the relationship there?
So first, let me talk about Rake. There are two separate things there. So Rake is a library for running scripts or running commands like your DB create, your DB seed, your DB migrate. It's kind of like telling Rails to do something. So Rake is a like separate gem, but it's become very core to Rails. When you run Rails DB something, it utilizes Rake under the hood. So the Rails command utilizes the bundler context and Rake underneath the hood. So if you see documentation and it says something like, let me navigate to this repo real quick. Let's go into setlist and let's just open that one up. If you see like documentation online and it says like Rake DB migrate, just know that the Rake is kind of like the old version of doing things. We have in more recent version of Rails, we prefer to use the Rails DB commands. So that's the correct way to do it. If you were using Rake, you most likely will have to prepend this with bundle exec. And so then this command gets really long, bundle exec Rake DB migrate. It's much easier to just do Rails DB migrate. So rather than doing Rake, always use the Rails versions of the command. That's the first point. The second point that you brought up was the Heroku Run. So in the Heroku guides, it will say something like do Heroku Run Rake DB migrate. So utilizing what I just said, when you see something like Rake, just replace that with Rails. So Heroku Run Rails DB migrate is the command I would want you to use. And the other thing I want to talk about here is that you can look at this command as two separate commands. There's the Heroku Run, and then there's the Rails DB migrate. Heroku Run is telling Heroku to execute this command on your remote Heroku server that is not on your computer. It lives like somewhere else. It could be in China, it could be in Australia, it could be in the United States. We have no idea, we don't really care where it is, but it's not on your computer. So this is run this command remotely. And then the second part is the command itself.
So we should be like, every time you migrate our development environment, we should be running the Heroku Run Rails migrate on the remote as well.
Exactly. And that goes along with what we talked about yesterday with Heroku, where you want to kind of develop Heroku simultaneously with local. Like when you get something working locally, push it up to Heroku, make sure it works on Heroku. Same thing with the migrations. Yep. Other questions on like the bundler context or bundling things or anything like that? We don't have like a specific place in the mod to talk about this, so I think this is as good a spot as any. Any other questions about the independent challenge? Again, I'll drop more instructions about that, but plan to set aside 3 hours to do that on your own time. Make sure you're setting a timer too. don't just say like, oh, I'm going to work from 9 to 12, because then you'll be tempted to like not look at the clock or whatever. I would just say like, no matter what, make sure you're setting some kind of 3-hour timer when you do this assessment. Or it's not really an assessment, it's a challenge. Yeah, it's not an assessment. We're just kind of practicing using this repo. Okay. I think that is about it for like intro housekeeping stuff. For the project survey, I saw we got 24 responses, which is great. Would really love to hear from the 5 of you who didn't fill that out. So if you could make a note for yourself, that would be great to fill that out. Let's go ahead and take a 5-minute palm, and we'll start talking about many-to-manys. So we'll come back at 9:30. All right, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started with our first activity of the morning. So thinking back to all the way back to last Thursday when I talked to you all about one-to-many relationships, we did a lot of diagramming. We had Doug screen share and show us his like tables, and then Harrison was like drawing on them and connecting them. What I want you to do now is I want you to do that activity again. But now that we're much more familiar with one-to-many relationships and we've had some time to implement them on the project, I'm going to give you all a little bit less time to do this, but I really want us to ground this conversation about one-to-many relationship or many-to-many relationships in our understanding of one-to-many relationships. So the way, just as a sneak preview, we're going to implement many-to-many relationships using one-to-many relationships. So first things first, we're going to go over those. I dropped in your cohort channel some instructions for diagramming. So I want you all to take about 5 minutes on your own to diagram the one-to-many relationship in set list. And some things I want you to include in your diagram are tables, columns, several rows of data, primary keys, foreign keys, and I want you to draw those arrows connecting associated records to demonstrate that one-to-many. And in the channel, it says one-to-man. I'm going to change that to one-to-many. There we go. Yeah, does anybody have any questions about that? And y'all can go ahead and get started drawing. If you're feeling good. Cool. Let's take 5 minutes on our own. Let's take 2 more minutes on our own. All right. Can I get a hand raise if you would like some more time for your diagram? All feeling pretty good about it. Okay, I'm gonna open up some breakout rooms. I'm gonna give you all 5 minutes to share. I was just catching up on the chat. I see you've joined the theme.
Yeah, I had a couple of Lord of the Rings backgrounds saved for a while, so it seemed perfect.
That was very, very appropriate. Nice. I'm gonna start drawing my diagram on this whiteboard, but you can ignore it if you want.
Oh, okay. Cool.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I would love to have a couple of volunteers to show us what you came up with. Can I give you all 30 seconds to raise your hands and volunteer? Joseph, thank you.
Yeah, so I worked through the lesson a little bit earlier, so I kind of did
That's okay.
it. This is hard to read, but I did musicians and instruments, and then I wrote a third table called musician instruments. And like, so it's many to many, being that one musician can have many instruments and one instrument can have many musicians. I linked them together all by their IDs. So this row is going to be musician ID. This row is instrument ID. So like the first musician has the instrument ID of 1. The second musician has both of the instruments. So that creates 2 rows. So the ID of 2, instrument ID 1, still musician ID 2, and then instrument ID 2.
Gotcha. So I think that this is a great sneak preview of what's to come. For this one, I asked you to do the one-to-many in set list. So Joseph, I think you went a little bit beyond that and did a
Oh, sorry.
And that's okay. That's okay. No, that's fine. I mean, if you worked through it earlier, yeah, I think you went a little bit past what I was asking you to do, which is fine. Can I get a volunteer to share the one-to-many from set list? That's okay. I got some random volunteers. Oh, Angel, thank you.
Yes. Okay. I did mine on Excel, Google Sheets. And so ignore my arrows. They're very hard in Google Sheets to do.
Yeah.
So I have artists over here. So artist has many songs, and then the song belongs to an artist. And so I have Billy. She has 2 songs that I wrote over here. And so these 2 link to the artist. And then I have Prince, and he just has 1 song that I added. That's right here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that looks great. Do you think, could I get another volunteer? I kind of just want to do what we did last time during class. Could you share again? And can we get someone to, actually, let's do this. Genevieve, I saw your hand up earlier. Do you think you could share your diagram?
Yes, I can. One moment. Do you want me to take the arrows off? Is that what
No,
you're getting at? Okay.
Let's see what you got.
I was kind of redoing my arrows because I drew them previously, and they looked like, something that a 5th grader did. So
that's okay. I don't have drawing skills past 5th grade.
I'm just trying to get it to move. Okay. I don't know how to get it to rotate.
Yeah, this is tough.
Okay. So essentially we have Whitney here, who has 2 songs that relate to, so her artist relates to these 2 songs in the songs table. Then we have Michael Jackson, who would track straight to here. We're just going to draw this arrow instead. Prince does not have any songs. And so Elton John goes there, and Michael Jackson goes there. Let me go ahead and take these out to clear things up. I don't know if that helps. Or...
That one looks good. Yeah, that looks good. So can I get, let me ask for another volunteer for this. Can you describe, I want someone to describe the connection between these 2 tables using the words foreign key and primary key.
So the artist ID on songs is the foreign key to, and it connects to the artist.id, which is the primary key. And so the artist can have many songs.
Exactly. Yep, you've got it. Artist ID, foreign key. Yeah, this is great, Genevieve. Connects to the primary key on the artist table. Great job. Does anyone have any questions about this activity before we move on? I think y'all did a good job with this. Awesome. So let's go ahead and I'm going to stop your sharing, Genevieve, and I'm going to start sharing my version. So I've got an artist table and a songs table here. Can I get a couple suggestions of some songs and some artists from people?
Michael Jackson.
Yes, this is the fun part.
Fleetwood
Yeah,
Mac.
let me also do, yeah, let's do some artists first. So let me label this one as my artist table. So we're gonna get Michael Jackson, Fleetwood Mac. Is that spelling right?
Yes.
Let's do one more artist.
Britney Spears.
Perfect. Britney Spears. Okay, and then let's get some suggestions for songs. Doesn't matter which artist, just one of these three artists. Shout them out.
Toxic by Britney Spears. So artist ID, we're not filling that in yet.
Yeah, let's just do the song titles for now.
Rumors.
Billie Jean.
Billie Jean. Keep going.
Dreams.
Dreams. About
Thriller.
Thriller. Yeah, gotta put that one in there.
Oops, I did it again.
Oops, I did it again. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect. Cool. So for our foreign key or our primary keys, we can kind of just go in order, just the way our database would. It's auto sequence, so like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the exact IDs don't really matter. Yeah, we just kind of like let the database assign those for us. And so now we can connect Toxic to Britney Spears via the artist ID of 3. We can connect Rumors to Fleetwood Mac via artist ID 2, Billie Jean to Michael Jackson with 1, Dreams to Fleetwood Mac with 2, Thriller to Michael Jackson with 1, Oops, I Did It Again to Britney Spears. And then we can kind of connect these IDs together like this. Oops. That's close enough. That's boom, 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 boom. Cool. So I think you all did a great job with this activity. This is kind of like what I was expecting to see, and I think from what we saw, that's what you all came up with. So the next thing we're going to talk about is a many-to-many relationship. So I'm going to give you all a second to think about this. Our many-to-many relationship is playlists and songs. So think about how playlists relate to songs and how that's a many-to-many relationship. So playlists are going to be part of, or sorry, songs are going to be part of, could be part of many playlists, and playlists are going to have many songs on them. So that's our many-to-many. So I'm going to start diagramming this out. I did save this version of the diagram. So let me just drop that into your code help channel real quick, so we have easy access to that. And we have our first version of our diagram. Okay, so that diagram is in code help now. So I'm going to take out these connector arrows. Whoops, I think I removed one of my artist IDs. That's okay. Yeah, I'm deleting those artist IDs. So we're going to I'll just take out these artist IDs right now. And actually, yeah, just for completeness, I'm going to put them back. Yeah, I'm going to take them out. We are not going to need them. So for this activity, we're going to kind of like forget about the artist for now. And we're just going to do the songs with their titles. And so let's take out this table over here. And I'm going to create a playlists table on the right here. And I'm going to like just draw the table first, and then we'll worry about like how do we connect the two together. So I'm going to like make some more room. And maybe I could make some more room with the songs table, because eventually, oops, didn't quite get everything. Eventually, we're going to want to connect these two together, and we're going to need some room to do that. Okay, can I get a suggestion for some names of some playlists we could put these songs on? So we're going to have a name of the playlist, and we're always going to have that ID column.
Lo-fi hip hop beats to chill and /study to.
Is that a reference to something? I've seen that on YouTube like a million times.
Yeah, there's just like, it's like the go-to playlist name for the internet, I think.
Perfect. Lo-fi beats. Other
Bangers
suggestions?
with a
Bangers
with a Z.
with a Z. Perfect. Perfect. Other suggestions? Maybe just one more. How about classics? There we go. Awesome. So the first thing that I want to talk about is, let's actually do it like this. Let's first just like connect our songs to our playlist with just to like kind of make up some association. So maybe like toxic is in bangers. Let's actually make this an arrow or double arrow. So we could do something like this. Let's say we want to do this. Let's say rumors is in classics. Maybe Billie Jean is also in bangers. Dreams we'll put in maybe lo-fi. And we'll just kind of like connect these together like this. So the first thing I want to talk about is why what we know about one-to-many so far kind of falls short of when we want to make a many-to-many relationship. So let's say we're trying to connect this song to this is a little much. I'm kind of regretting this. Let's go back. And let's just do a much more simple example. So let's say to demonstrate our many-to-many, we want toxic to be in the bangers and the classics playlist. And then let's say we want rumors to be in also be in the classics playlist like this. So this is demonstrating our many-to-many relationship. So if we look at the classics playlist, there are many songs in that. We have the rumor song and the toxic song. If we look at toxic, that's also a many-to-many relationship. It is in both the classics and the bangers playlist. You all with me so far? Okay. So what we can't do is we can't do something like this. Let's say like playlists ID, something like this. So if we're trying to indicate that toxic is in both playlist number 2 and playlist number 3, well, what we've seen so far with foreign keys is that we could do something like this, put in a foreign key to say like, okay, toxic is associated with playlist 2, but then we're kind of losing the many-to-many here. It's not what, how do we like communicate that it's also part of playlist 3? So your first instinct might be to do something like this. Well, rather than just saying this is playlist 2, let's actually make this an array and say this is 2 and 3, something like this. So that would be like a good first guess. The reason why we can't do this is because the database has a size limit for each of its data types. If we've visualized the database and we're doing it right here as a like physical box, as a physical table that's laid out, we can kind of take that metaphor a little bit further and say each of these columns has a certain width. It has a width of how big, of how much it can store in it. And if we try to do something like an array, well, an array is a collection. It stores many things in it. And in fact, an array could store infinite number of things. So if we say now like this data type of a foreign key is now an array and we can store multiple foreign keys, our database wouldn't be able to do that because we would have to put a limit on how many associations we could have. So maybe we say you can only store 10 foreign keys in here. Well, then we have a limited many-to-many where it's only many-to-many if it's under 10, something like that. So the big point here is each of your columns in your database needs a size, needs a finite number of things it can store. If you look very closely at your database schema, like maybe you look at Postico, you'll see like a string data type is stored as varchar 256. What that is saying is that you can only store 256 characters. So if we tried to make a really long string longer than 256, the database actually wouldn't be able to store that. So every data type, including strings, needs a finite size. So that's why an array is not going to work. Ben?
Yeah, so I'm just wondering then, like you would have to create multiple, like a row and add, like have the same song linked to a new playlist, but then how do you tie, like how do you, because then the ID has to be different, and then it is, so do you then all of a sudden go by referencing off of the name, or like how does that relationship work when you have the same song having different IDs?
The same song having different, the same song, I would say having different IDs, having different foreign keys or different records from other tables it needs to connect to. Is that a fair clarification?
Yeah, so like you have in the songs, when you have a toxic going to different playlists, it'll have different rows, but the primary key, it doesn't really matter because it'll just be you'll have different primary keys referencing the same song.
You'll have different primary keys referencing the same song.
Or like maybe I'm misunderstanding how then you lay out the many-to-many with like.
So let me say this and see if this clears it up. This is an example of where our foreign keys are falling short. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to talk about another strategy for doing this many-to-many. So if this doesn't make sense of like, how does the many-to-many work? That's my point. I want this to be like, wait a minute, we can't quite do this with the tools we've been given so far. We're going to have to come up with a new strategy.
Okay.
If your takeaway from this section, if you're taking away one thing, it's this. DB can't store arrays. When it comes to a database, we kind of like the notion of an array is not valid because of that finite size. An array is not something that has a finite size. An array is a collection of a potentially infinite number of things. So the database can't handle that. The database is very simple. It's like store a piece of data. An array isn't a piece of data, it's multiple pieces of data, and that's why we can't store it. All right, so just to leave you all on the edge of your seats a little bit more, we're going to take another palm. And then when we come back, we'll talk about what is the strategy for doing this. So let's come back at 10:10. All right. Give everybody a couple seconds to get back on. Please turn your cameras as you come back. Please turn your cameras back on. All right. So when we left off, we talked about how the database can't store this array of IDs. So we're going to need another strategy. And kind of the point of me like showing you this is just to talk a little bit more about like how the database works. And in the future, just so you know, like if you try to add an array to your database, it's not quite going to work. So I said before we left that like kind of our tools that we have so far fail us, our foreign keys fail us. And that's not entirely true because this many-to-many relationship, we're still going to manage through foreign keys and primary keys. And we're going to add in something else that we've already seen, which is another table. So in order to manage a many-to-many relationship, we are going to add a third table. And this table is going to like sit in between these two other tables. So I'm going to take out this DB can't store arrays, and I'm going to take out this playlists ID. And what I'm going to do just for visualization is I'm going to move this ID column that I have for my songs over to the right here. That'll make sense why in just a minute. So when it comes to visualizing your database and how the columns are laid out, don't think of your columns as being in a specific order, like the ID is the first column, the title is the second column. There's really no order to them. So you can like visually move them around. So that's what I'm doing right here. So yeah. So in order to manage our many-to-many relationship, we are going to need what I'm going to refer to as a join table. So I'm going to take notes on it underneath here. So this is a join table. Its job is to manage the many-to-many relationship. That's its job. Each row of this table is the connection between records from the, I'll say the quote, many tables. So if I'm using this example, each row of our join table is the connection between a playlist and a song. Some other key things here. This is just a regular table. So there's nothing like special about this table. When we say like quote unquote join table, that's more just describing the purpose of the table. It doesn't describe anything like special about it. The database doesn't recognize it as like a completely different table. It's just any other table. So we will create it using migrations. We can change it using migrations, et cetera, et cetera. Another thing to point out here is that this is not it's not the same as a SQL joins. And that's kind of running off the screen here. So in your intermission work, you did some SQL joins, and we're going to have a class on SQL joins on next Wednesday. This join table is very easy to confuse with the SQL joins. They're not the same thing. They can be related. You can use a SQL joins through a join table, but they are not exactly the same thing. Perhaps while I'm doing this just for like completeness sake, you might also hear this referred to as an associative table. So yeah, I'll just put that in there as well. So I said that each row from this table is a connection between the other two tables. So what that means is that this table is going to have two foreign keys in it. So again, not using any new concept here. We're still using foreign keys. Now we're just taking it to the next level. And now we're going to have a table that has two foreign keys in it. So I'm going to make one of them playlist ID and the other one song ID. And as always, our table is going to have just a regular primary key ID column. And so I'm going to put that in the middle here. So again, not really thinking about our columns being in order. I'm just doing this for visualization purposes. So this table is going to have 3 columns. And we'll add some rows into it. So each row is the connection between a song and a playlist. So if I am trying to put Toxic into the bangers playlist, I'm going to say song ID 1 belongs to playlist or is associated with playlist 2, like that. And as always, my primary key, I'm just going to kind of auto increment that. So that will be 1. So the primary key doesn't really matter here. What we're really looking at is this song ID and this playlist ID. And so now that I have those foreign keys in here, I can connect song ID foreign key to songs table primary key, just like we did before, and playlist ID foreign key to playlist primary key, like that. And so now we can see that that Toxic is related to the bangers playlist through, that's a key word, through this third table that we have right here. Jake.
So following this logic, if you like really love Toxic, you could put it like 4 times into this playlist.
Exactly. So when we have a many relationship, many indicates 0 to infinity. We could have 0 relationships with it. We could have as many as we want. So yeah, Jake, can you walk me through, if I wanted to put this in the classics playlist, how would I do that?
Number 1, that's reasonable. You would probably make a new table. Oh no, you wouldn't even need a new table, because then you could just put song ID 1 in there and then playlist ID 3. And you could then just have one table that like controls what goes into all of the playlists.
Exactly. So now drawing my arrows, Toxic is connected to classics through this join table in the middle.
And so that ID there, that's not really
this one.
Yeah, that's just used. That's not used as a foreign key anywhere else.
Yes, this is not a foreign key. This ID column is a primary key for this join table.
Sure, but I mean, it's not used as a foreign key like on a separate table at any point.
Yes, most likely, yes. Yeah, me drawing this ID column is just to not lose track of that fact that every table, regardless of it's a join table or whatever, has a primary key of ID. Andrew.
So in this join table, would it be like kind of pointless to also add like the artist ID as a column, since we can get there by, in this column we have the song ID and we can find the artist through the song ID?
Yeah, so maybe just for completeness sake, let me put back in artist ID, and I'll kind of make that this left column over here. We don't necessarily need to fill this in with data, but yeah, you wouldn't want to put the artist ID in this join table because the artist ID is already stored on the songs table. So that kind of gets back to that idea of normalization. We only want to store data in a single place. We don't want to duplicate data across our database. So we wouldn't want to say, song artist is, we know the song artist both in the songs table and this join table over here. Does that make sense, Andrew?
Yeah, that was what I was thinking. Perfect. Thank you.
Cool. Before I go too much further, I'm referring to this thing as the join table. Just like any other table, it's going to need a name. So when we name this table, typically if the table is just for the purpose of linking the two other tables together, like songs and playlists, a lot of times we'll just kind of concatenate the names together. So like song playlists or playlist songs. My only recommendation when you are kind of like using that strategy of combining the two names is just think about how you're most often going to use it and kind of what makes more sense. Song playlists kind of indicates this is finding all of the playlists for a song. But I think what we're gonna, if this is like a music player app, most likely what we're gonna do is we're gonna wanna look for all of the songs on a playlist. So I think playlist songs kind of like just rolls off the tongue better, but it really doesn't matter. It could be playlist songs, it could be song playlists, it could be, I think the lesson plan says like, it could be super happy fun time, but that wouldn't really make sense. So I'm gonna call it playlist songs, like that. Without going like too deep into this, a lot of times this join table could store information other than just these three columns. This, I mentioned this playlist songs table or this join table is just any other table. So there might be other data you want to store on it. So you might find some other more logical names. Like if we say this table is the connection between two other tables, you can think of what's the real life connection. And I'll kind of just leave that there. What's the real world connection? Ben.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, so right now this, like in terms of like putting it into a project or something, this table is just kind of then floating out there, and to use like this relationship, you'd probably have to have like controllers and that stuff, but at that point, so do we test these join tables, or how do we, like, how do they relate to weaving it back into like implementation?
You will test them, and you'll test them the same way that we've tested other models. So these are typically just going to be model tested, and just like the other ones where we use shoulda matchers to say it has many or it belongs to, we're going to do the same thing in our code.
Cool.
Yeah. Jordan.
So I was wondering, it's like a song cannot have many songs, and an artist cannot have many artists. But could I compile a playlist of many playlists? And like, would I use playlist songs to put that in, or would I have to make another table to do something like that?
So you're saying like artist has many artists, songs has many songs. So you're kind of like,
oh no, I was saying they don't. So songs has like, or I don't know. I guess maybe I am. I'm just wondering basically like, how would you make a playlist that has other playlists in it, I guess?
How would you have a play? Yeah, so now what you're getting into is a self-referencing relationship where I think you're kind of imagining like, what if a playlist could be composed of many other playlists?
Yeah.
I would say that's a little bit too much for us to get into today. That's
All right.
a little bit more complicated of a database schema. Yeah.
Cool.
Joseph.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, like, you can have a table that has as many foreign keys linking as many tables as you want, right? Like,
yeah, there's no limit.
Okay, cool.
Brisa?
This might be like a silly question. So we have this,
No.
if it's our schema, we have like the song ID with an integer and also the playlist ID with an integer. What if, like, how would I view the entire like name, artist ID, the play count on this play songs? Would I have to like open it up in Postico and that'll just show everything down? Or how would I access this information better yet?
Gotcha. So I would say like that's a good thing for you to do as you work through this lesson. I am going to have you all work through the lesson code separately, but opening it up in Postico and clicking on your tables and seeing what they look like, that's a great way to visualize them. You said like, how would I visualize the like play count and what was the other one? The length. Those just like the artist ID, those are columns that are stored on the songs table. We're just leaving them out because it's not really relevant to this diagram. So just remember that those are still columns of our songs table. We're just not showing them for just kind of like, I don't have enough room on this diagram. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Let's keep going and filling out this diagram a little bit more. So I can see right now, I'll draw this arrow, then I'll kind of erase it. I can see that this toxic song through this playlist songs table belongs to bangers, and it belongs to classics like that. but we don't yet have, so that's one side of the many. We can see that this song is associated with many playlists, but we don't yet have a playlist associated with many songs. So maybe let's put Billie Jean into classics. Can I get a volunteer? How would I associate Billie Jean with the classics playlist? Will.
You're gonna take Billie Jean's ID of 3 and put it in the song ID column on playlist songs. Then the ID, I guess, would be 3 since that's gonna be sequential. And then playlist ID, you want to put it on classics, right? So it's just gonna be 3 on the playlist ID column.
Exactly. So we've got 3s across the board. And I can connect them like that. So now I can see the classics has 2 arrows pointing to it. It's got Billie Jean and Toxic, and it's going through this playlist songs table. So I'm using this terminology. Why don't we just for practice, why don't we do some more? Why don't we put something into the lo-fi beats playlist? Can I get a volunteer for that? Just pick any of these songs and we'll put it in there. I saw a lot of volunteers for the last one. Katie, thank you.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and do rumors. So you would have the song ID of, or the song ID of 2 in the song ID column, and then 4 for the auto increment primary key on playlist songs. Yep. And then the playlist ID is going to be 1.
Awesome. And then I'll connect them. So song number 2 is now associated with playlist number 1, like that. Awesome. So I've been using this terminology, and I want to make sure that I write this down. So now songs has many playlists through playlist songs. So I'll just put this here above the songs table. And I'm using the symbol notation. This is what you're going to put in your models. So this is going to be the new piece of code that we're laying on, is this through for our has manys. And then our playlists is going to has many songs through playlist songs. And just like we mentioned before, our playlist songs table is still a table. And so we're going to have a model for it as well. So this playlist songs table is also associated with songs and playlists. It is associated with songs because it belongs to songs. And it is associated with playlists because it belongs to playlist. And song would be singular here. So when we use these has many and these belongs to, we're looking at a single record. What's that single record's relationship to the other tables? So if I look at this playlist song number 1 here, it belongs to this one song and this one playlist. So each single record out of that playlist songs table belongs to one record from the other tables. And so because the playlist songs belongs to each of these other 2 tables, that's inferring another relationship that we have in here, which is that now the songs has many playlist songs, and the playlist also has many playlist songs. So what we have here is we actually have 6 different relationships. The relationship between songs and playlist songs, the relationship between songs and playlists, the relationship between playlists and songs, the relationship between playlists and playlist songs, the relationship between playlist songs to playlists, and the relationship from playlist songs to songs. So there are a lot of relationships to keep track of now.
Ryan, are you going to drop this in the code help channel?
The diagram, yes.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Yeah. The next thing that I'm gonna have you all do is work through the lesson plan. But I just want to make sure that we kind of finish up with this diagram before we do that. Does anyone have any other questions? I think we are in a good spot with this diagram. Erica.
Sorry if you already answered this, but in the join tables, are you ever going to have other columns that aren't just ID numbers? Like, are they ever going to be like a name or some other sort of type of attribute?
Yes, and let me I'll go ahead and talk through one. So okay, so to answer your question, yes, you are going to have different data on your join tables besides just those IDs, and that's going to happen in this next project. So you're going to have to do that in this next project. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to drop this into your code help channel right now. There you go. So now we've got the first diagram that I dropped is our one-to-many. The second diagram that I dropped is our many-to-many. So let's go ahead and take a look at this lesson plan together before I let you all work through this. So this is all kind of what we've already did, many-to-many relationships in Rails. So this is adding the playlist model and kind of working through doing this. And then this is where we get into creating the playlist songs join table. So using our same shoulda matcher syntax as before for it should belong to something. And so this is we've seen all of this before. Oh, I can see an example of where there's a rake db migrate in our lesson plan. So just use the Rails db migrate instead. Especially, you can try this command, but it might give you some errors. So everything up to this point is what we've seen before. And then here's our first new piece of code here that we haven't seen before. So now rather than just has many, now we can have a has many through. So we can go, you can kind of think of it as like, I like to think of it as like a stepping stone in a river. So like I'm trying to get from one side of the river to the other. Well, I might need if the river's too wide, I might need a stepping stone in it to say, I need to go over this stone to get to the other side. That's kind of how I think of a through. I need to like use playlist songs as a stepping stone to get to songs from playlists. Another metaphor I've heard is like, it's like Spider-Man, how Spider-Man like gets from place to place, but he swings through buildings. So he like uses building 1 to shoot a web to swing and then jump over to building 2. I think that's a good metaphor as well. And then the other thing that's going to be new here is the shoulda matcher syntax for testing that. So now rather than just it should have many playlists, now we have it should have many playlists, and we chain on dot through playlist songs. And then so this is going to kind of work bottom up. We're going to start by building up the models and the tables, and then we're going to get to using them in a playlist index page. And I think that is about it. So I'm going to put you all into some breakout rooms to work on this. I do want everybody to be working on this on their own computer, but I'm putting you in breakout rooms so that you have kind of like a study group to bounce ideas off of or ask questions if you get stuck on anything. Yeah, I think the first thing that you should do when you go into your breakout rooms is take a 5-minute POM. But yeah, I'm going to give you a pretty good chunk of time to do this. I think I'm going to start with 30 minutes on the timer, and I think you all will probably need more time in that. So after 30 minutes, we'll come back together and we'll just kind of check in and see where everybody's at. Ben?
Yeah, is there a branch that you would recommend working off of in setlist, or is it just where?
Oh yeah. What was our last class?
There's a many-to-many branch in it in setlist.
That one's probably going to have the answer or the completed code from this.
I think AR associations was the last one, Brian, that we
I think
did.
it might be passing data actually.
I think
Let's check it
inheritance
out.
was our last class.
Yeah, so that was our last class, but I don't think we did any work in setlist. That's the thing. Let me just check out passing data. What are we going to need for this? I don't think we actually need, I think as long as we have a songs table, I think we should be good. But let's go ahead and say passing data.
I was able to do it with model testing.
Gotcha.
So.
Yeah, so that one's probably, that one will work. I would say like passing data is probably the like most correct version. So I will go ahead and add that into the lesson plan. But for now, just like plan to check out passing data. Was that, I think I saw another hand. Was that the other question? Cool. All right, y'all. So I'm going to open the breakout rooms just so you have the place, have your place to go. Take a 5-minute palm, and if you run into anything or any like setup issues, you can use the ask for help button, or you can always return to the main session if you need to as well. And you can like go back into your breakout room. All right, those are open now.
I was totally typing and then pressed enter while I was trying to line break and then came right back to the main room.
I did the exact same thing. I typed in RSpec, hit enter, and I was like, where did I go?
Like, what happened? Funny.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Let's do some polling just to like kind of get a sense of where everybody's at. So can I get a hand raise if you got all the way through all the code in here? So through building out this playlist index, the view in here. Yeah. Cool. I'm gonna lower your hands. And let's take a step back to right before this, or actually right before the playlist songs index page. So a song has many playlists. So adding tests for a many-to-many in the song spec, and your song model has this playlist songs. So I guess if you got to the point of all three, you have the 3 models and each of them has your 2 associations. So those are the 6 relationships that we talked about. If you got that far. Cool. Okay, let's take a, actually, I think I'm gonna do what I did before and I'm gonna put you all back into your rooms before we take another palm. So it seems like about half of the classes is up through that point, so that is good. If you have finished, I would say go ahead and work through the checks for understanding. And what I want, I'll drop this in the code help channel. I'll say if you finish early, not the code help channel, the main cohort channel. So if you finish early, work on the checks for understanding. And then if you finish that, what I want you all to do is I want you to diagram the many-to-many in the project that you're about to do. So at the end of this class, what I want everybody to have is having worked through all of the code in this lesson plan. So you've built a many-to-many relationship in setlist, and I want you to have a diagram of what that many-to-many is going to look like in your project. So I'll say that. From the project. And you might have to look at the project spec again to figure out what that many-to-many relationship is. Before I put you all back into your breakout rooms, and I'll recommend you all do the same thing of take a palm. What questions were there any questions that came up as you were working through this lesson? Angel?
Yes. So after you finish the playlist index page, the spec, there's a section that starts with in the setup portion of this test. Sorry, scroll up a smidge right there. Oh, sorry, you right there. So
I see it.
Yes. I was wondering, so to me that sounded like there is multiple ways to create a playlist song. And I was wondering what those different ways are, because it shows one way in the spec, but I was wondering what the other way was.
Yeah. So let's take a look at it. And I think what you're referring to is this version right here of creating a playlist song. So when we were diagramming, we said like, okay, to connect a song to a playlist, we're gonna have to add a new row into our playlist songs table to connect the two. And so that's what we can see happening on each of these lines of code. So this is one version. The other version is actually this one right here, right before that. So just like we said with the one-to-many relationship, so if we do like an artist.songs.create, that will take care of associating an artist and a song together. Same thing with this version. So we have like talking heads. Sorry, wait. Does this look different? Okay, so Angel, I think I'm gonna answer that question by saying, I'm gonna take a couple minutes to look through this. It seems like this has maybe been updated. So yeah, I'm gonna take a look and do some digging and see about that. So yeah, I can see why this is maybe, why this is confusing.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll talk about that when we come back. Any other questions coming up from the lesson? All right, I'm gonna put you back into your breakout rooms.
Oh, here he is.
Hello.
Hi. We were just going over what you need to do to add to our models to set up the many-to-many relationship. And the part that I'm just getting a little hung up on is in our playlist song model. I'm trying to wrap my head around why it's a belongs to relationship and not a has many relationship.
Yeah, so when we're talking about the relationship, we're looking at it from the perspective of a single record. So a single row in that playlist songs table, it has a foreign key for a song ID and a foreign key for a playlist ID. So because each of those foreign keys is pointing to a single record from the other tables, that's why it belongs to that record.
I see. Okay.
So if you look at the diagram from the code help channel of the many-to-many, if you look at a single row in that table, you can see each of those rows only points to one song and one playlist. Does that clear it up a little?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It does. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, let me know if you need more help.
Okay.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Do you guys still talk to your mentors?
Like
I do
rarely.
some.
I just set up like a twice a week hour-long session with them because I feel like I'm now actually going to really need some
Yeah, I'm
specific
working on that
things
right now.
from them as far as going over stuff.
Hey, Brian, how are you?
Good. How are y'all?
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, so I'm getting this failure error. The playlist under page should be able to display all playlists, and it can't visit the playlist. It's getting undefined method make response.
We're gonna go watch that Tailwind video.
Undefined method make response for playlist controller table doesn't exist class.
Right.
Interesting.
And if you look at my DB schema, I've got a playlist create table in here, and I migrated it.
Interesting. Can we go find that playlist controller?
Yeah, it's right here.
Oh, okay. So your issue here is that you've inherited from application record. Yeah.
Yep.
And this is an example of like that make response right there. That's an example of the controller is trying to do something under the hood that we don't necessarily need to care about, which is that process of building up the response we're going to send back to the user. So that's why the method it doesn't have was make response. So that's something that we can see that we inherit from application controller, and it kind of just works and we don't need to worry about it most of the time.
And a super important lesson about like paying attention to details.
All right. I'm gonna let y'all get back to it.
Yeah, thanks, man.
You're welcome. All right, welcome back, everybody. For this last couple minutes of class, I would like to answer any questions you all had that came up in that. And have you all fill out the survey. So if you want to open up that now and start working on it while we do the questions, that would be great. And if we have time, I'd like to take a look at and see if anybody diagrammed the many-to-many from the project. Yeah, so let's go with Ben.
I have a question about the project. Is that okay, or do we want to keep it on the?
We can do, yeah, we can talk about the project. Let's do it.
I was just wondering how much of like housekeeping should we do for the code that's already there, to be like, if something doesn't work as it should be, like how much of it should be fixing what's already there?
So if there's something that doesn't work, I would ask you to point me to that. I think everything in the code should work and be functional. Now, some of the code might not be written in the best way as possible. And I would say, like, you don't need to go back and refactor code, but it might be a good idea if it's code that's relevant to you. So for instance, like you might want to update the pet model if you notice something in there that's funky. But if you're unsure, I would say like just tag, you can ask in the code help channel and we can talk through like specifics there.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah. And so then should we just like kind of assume that the person using the form like knows the correct thing to put into each form, so it's not like, doesn't give you like an invalid thing for like if it's expecting a certain type of data in a field, should we just assume that the person filling out the form knows what the correct thing to put in there is?
Yeah, especially if it's an existing form. So is there like a specific form you're referring to?
Yeah, like when you're creating a new pet, and I was trying to work through diagnosing stuff, and then like it wouldn't create pets, and I was looking, and then it was like an invalid sex when you put in like anything, put in male or female or anything. It's like it didn't really. So just like assume that the person filling out the forms knows what to put in there.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of that's something that we're not really going to work on in this project, the creation of a pet. That's not really going to come into play in this project. So that's something that you would not have to go and fix and make sure that that works. That's totally fine. If it comes up in one of the future stories, that's an example of something that doesn't. If it does come up in a future story that's relevant to you, then you might want to fix it, but you don't have to go fix everything from that project.
Okay, cool, thanks.
You're welcome. Just to name it, when we're talking about like the user filling in a form correctly, that's the theme of the SAD paths class. So, Andrew.
Yeah, just going off of what Ben was just talking about. So, yeah, I was running into that problem, and so on my application new page, I was trying to like have them add pets and like search for a pet, and I was trying to see if that worked, but I was trying to create a pet and I couldn't create one because of like the male female debacle. I couldn't figure out how to get that up there so I can have pets show up and see that they're actually showing up on there, and then able to add it like on the actual web page.
Gotcha. So if you're talking about creating a pet in a test, is that what you're talking about?
Not necessarily a test. I was just checking on the web page and to see that it was all working up there. And I couldn't create a pet to actually get pets to show up so I could be able to search for it.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a specific way that you need to add in the gender of the pet, and you need to it needs to be like in male or female in one of those categories.
Okay, but did you say not to worry about that? So as long as it's working in our test, then we can just go on?
Yeah, exactly. So when it comes to testing something in a future story to add a pet to an application, we're going to need some pets, but we don't need to use that form and worry about that. We can just create the pet with with a create method call. And so you don't need to like fix the form for that.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. What else is coming up for you all? Questions from that lesson plan? Yeah, any questions about the project? or if someone has diagrammed the many-to-many from the project, I'd love to take a look at that just so I kind of leave you all with an example, a good example going into the long weekend. Doug.
Yeah, I did the diagram.
Let's take a look. Cool. So this is looking pretty good so far. We've got, so I would say let's just focus on, I'm gonna draw on here. Let's just focus on these top 3 tables. Oops, that's not what I wanted.
I didn't know if this would come in later or not, if that would just be like something we faked, but I throw it in there.
Yeah, that's something that that we could potentially add, but for now, let's just think about the top 3 tables. So yeah, that's our pets, our applications, and then Doug, you've chosen to call this join table pet applications, which makes sense to me. Yeah. So we've got, it looks like we've got a couple columns called ID in here. Well, it looks like all of them are called ID.
Yeah, I screwed that up.
No, that's okay. Let's just talk through it together. So given what we talked about today, what could we name those columns? So one of them's pet ID. And the other one's application ID. That looks good. Yeah. So I'm going to post this recording. So if you all, I would highly recommend that you all, yeah. And so the applicant part, like you may or may not choose to add that in. So we'll kind of put that aside for now. I would highly recommend that you all go through the process of diagramming out the tables and what they should look like before you start like building it in your project. And I would recommend going a little bit farther than even Doug has gone right here. Do what we did in class and try to like create some rows of data. So this schema design will show us the tables and the columns, but it doesn't necessarily show us rows. So add in some rows for pets applications and then connect multiple pets to multiple applications and vice versa. That's what I would recommend that you do, but you at least have this on the recording as kind of like a answer key if you need to go back and review that. Any other questions on this diagram before Doug stops his screen share? Or Doug, do you have anything else? Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and get you off the screen share here. And I think, okay, so we've got some other hands. So let's go to Justin.
Yeah, I guess I just had a question about the project as far as like the applicant description and how long is the length of a string that can be held in the database? I know the bytes reach a certain amount or something, but
yeah, let's take a look at what do I want to do here. I think what I want to do is I want to open up Postigo. And let's go to set list. We'll just do the development database and we can look at, oh, am I not migrated? Okay, let me do a Rails DB migrate. Whoops, quit that too early. What is, oh man, I thought I worked through this early. Okay, crap. This is not going to work. Joseph, could I get you to share your screen and can we just do that on your computer?
absolutely. So where did you want to go?
Let's go back. Let's go to our set list development. And let's take a look at, songs. And then at the bottom, can we click on structure? And there we go. Yeah, I was hoping that this would show us some more information. What happens if you click on DDL down there? Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. So maybe let's go to Google here. I think this is a good thing for us to do together.
Cool. Did you want to Google just?
Can you pull your browser into your shared screen? Yeah. Let's Google Postgres character varying size. So I saw under that like schema that we're looking at the structure, it said it's a character varying, but I'm not exactly sure what a character varying is. So yeah, that first link is what we want to go to. It's postgresql.org. So this is the documentation for the database itself. And you can even see under that table, let me just highlight what I'm looking at. Yeah, so this first table right here, we can see it says character varying n, and it says variable length with a limit. So it looks like that can be different sizes. I'm wondering if there's a default in here. SQL defines two primary character types, character varying and character n, where n is a positive integer. Both these can store up to n characters, not bytes in length. An attempt to store a lower string or a longer string will result in an error. Does it say anything about like the default? Yeah, can we scroll down a little bit further? For short strings.
Storage.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I would think it would be somewhere in here. Oh, there we go. Special character types. Yeah, I'm not sure. So we don't need to like dig too deep into this, but this is where I would go to find the answers. Your postgresql.org documentations, I would want to look at the documentation for the database to see what that's doing. But okay. Yeah, don't quite know the answer there, but that's okay.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Kate. I think this will be our last one.
Yeah, I just had a question on a question I posted in Code Help. There was a warning that came up when I had pushed main up to Heroku, and it said that the warning is the same version, or the same version of this code has already been built, and just wanted to know, is that going to cause some errors down the way, or should I not worry about that?
It sounds like you don't have to worry about that. My interpretation of this version of the code has already been built means you're pushing to Heroku, but you're pushing the same thing to Heroku. And so that's Heroku saying like, hey, heads up, we're going to build this, but we've already built it before. So I would say it's probably not going to cause you any issues to rebuild a version on Heroku. Yeah, that's my short answer.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
You're welcome. All right, y'all. So let's go ahead and wrap it up here. It's noon. You're going to be back with me for Gear Up this afternoon at 1. So I'll see you there. Please if you haven't already, take a minute to fill out that survey. And I'll thank you all very much for your time.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
all.
Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.